Hello and welcome back to my channel and to a history walk around the Suffolk town of Halesworth. And in this video I shall discover the events that led up to a murder back in 1862. I'm starting my walk here at the rather impressive town church of St Mary's. The main body of the church dates from around 1473, but the tower wasn't completed until about 1726. And for a small town like Halesworth, they sure do have one very impressive church. A lot of really lovely architecture in the buildings that surround the church. Quite contrasting architecture. I could spend a lot longer having a wander around. But I'm actually here in Halesworth to investigate the site of a murder. There's only ever been one murder in Halesworth, and that was the local policeman, a man called Ebeneza Tye, on the 24th of November 1862. But actually there was another murder back in the 12th century. I remember reading in the history books a priest or a curate was murdered here. Perhaps I should investigate that one a little further. But it's the murder of Ebeneza Tye that I've come to look at and investigate. But just who was Ebeneza Tye? He was born between April and May 1838. In the village of Haskerton near Woodbridge. His father was called William, and he was a shoemaker, and his mother was a lady called Patricia Gert. He had a couple of siblings as well, two of whom were slightly older than he was. But I've tracked him down in the 1861 census, and he was living at 82 Alderton Street in the village of Alderton, just north of Felixstowe, and he was working as a blacksmith. Now, how did he get from working as a blacksmith in 1861 to being murdered here in 1862? Well, if you look closely at the census return for 1861, just 2 doors up from where he was living was the local police station. Now, I have no way of knowing whether he was recruited because of his ability and his persona, or whether he answered an advertisement and applied to join the police. But probably he may well have been recruited because of the person that he was. Now, we know a little more about him because in 1862 he was mentioned in the Quarter Sessions records for Halesworth in connection with a larceny case, and his sergeant, a man called Daniel Taylor, described him as, although inexperienced, he was an active and zealous officer. Just taking a walk down Cheddiston Street, down towards an area that used to be known as Clark's Yard. This is where a notorious or well-known burglar, a man called John Ducker, used to live. And Ebeneza Tye was sent down here on the night of the 24th of November 1862 to keep an eye on the property and to observe Ducker. There were two other police constables based at the station here in Halesworth, Henry Cuttermole and William Lucas. But why was Ebeneza Tye sent here? Perhaps he was more experienced than the other two, or maybe just more capable. But the site of Clark's Yard today is actually a private estate. It's Wellington Court, and at the front is the old Wellington pub, and Clark's Yard is down at the Wellington Court, now just behind me. The events of exactly what happened that night aren't clear. We know there was a scuffle and we know there was a chase. Ebeneza obviously ran into John Ducker, had a small fight. Ducker escaped, and then Ebeneza gave chase. Nothing more was heard from him until the following day, when his body was found in the stream behind Clark's Yard. When Ebenezer's body was found, they also found one of Ducker's caps nearby. Henry Cuttermore went round to arrest Ducker, and on doing so he discovered that Ducker had a bruised face. He was arrested for murder. He was tried and hanged at Ipswich on the 14th of April 1863. He was the last person publicly hanged in the county of Suffolk. The exact location of where Ebenezer's body was found is not known. However, this little bridge crosses the stream, and 50 yards behind me was the back of Clark's Yard. So somewhere just behind me was where the body was found. If you watched one of my last videos from Ipswich, which I looked at the executions and their locations within Ipswich, I talked about the hanging of John Ducker and the location of where that took place. It's interesting that when I was up at the church filming this morning, I got talking to a lovely young lady who came past, and it turns out that John Ducker is in her family tree. What an amazing coincidence that I should be filming today talking about the murder of Ebeneza Tye and the murderer John Ducker, and bumped into a distant relative of his. That really is quite amazing, and I'm so grateful to have met this lady. She was so nice to talk to. But now I'm going to go up to find Ebenezer's grave. He's actually buried in the municipal cemetery here in Halesworth, and we'll take a look through the town as we go up there and see what else we can discover about this really interesting little town. Spent the last few minutes walking down Cheddiston Street, looking at all the different architecture that's down there on the buildings. It really is quite a beautiful little town, this. Maybe I should come back and explore a little further and visit the museums as well. Just walk into the marketplace. There's a lovely old antique shop on the right hand side. It used to be the Three Tons Inn. About the 1760s, I believe it was formed. It's been an inn since then. It used to be owned by the Reeve family. I think Robert Reeve was the innkeeper back in 1764. And round the corner is another old pub, the Three Tons Tavern. Again, it was owned by the Reeve family. Both these pubs were bought by the Colchester Brewery Company in 1885, but they closed down in 1925. But this market area here really is absolutely gorgeous. Just walking around, looks as though it could be used as a film set. But they did make a film here in Halesworth back in 2019. It was a film called Yesterday, starring Lily James and Himish Patel. I haven't actually seen the film. Perhaps I should watch it. I don't actually have Netflix, so I usually have to wait for these things to come on the telly. Perhaps I should invest in Netflix. But let's have a look at what we can discover here in Halesworth on the way up to the cemetery. Just walking into a street called the Thoroughfare. It's actually a pedestrianised street. Makes a change to walk down one of those. There aren't many towns and cities in the country with pedestrianised streets, so it's a nice pleasure to see one. Interesting solicitor's office here called the Ram & Co. They can trace their history back 300 odd years. The firm was started by James Jermyn and his son Peter back in the early 1700s, and they're one of the oldest legal firms in the country. And it's interesting to see one that's as old as that in a small town like Halesworth. But the road I'm on was used in the film called Yesterday. There was a night scene in the rain, and this is the location for the film. They also used the White Hart in one of the cafes further down. Just walking into the cemetery. I'm not sure where his grave is. All I've got is a photograph that was taken back in 1862 when he was buried. It shows his grave surrounded by some policemen. However, his gravestone is very distinctive, so it shouldn't be too difficult to spot. And the lovely lady I spoke to earlier, she did tell me it was on the left-hand side, so I'm going to keep my eyes peeled on the left. Oh, and there it is. What a stroke of luck. And it's still in remarkably good condition after 160 odd years. Wow, there it is. Absolutely wonderful to actually find it. I've done so much research into Ebeneza and his story, and a little bit into his life as well. So to actually come here and stand next to him is really, really rather special. So, so there we go. By the grave of Ebeneza Tye, the Halesworth policeman who was murdered in the course of his duty. Ebeneza was not the first police officer in this country, serving police officer, to be murdered. And sadly, not the last. We should give thanks to all our police officers, past and present, for the work that they do, keeping law and order in this country and keeping us safe. Ebeneza's funeral was quite a large one. Friends and family and well-wishers from the town of Halesworth all came here to pay their respects to him, including a contingent from the Suffolk police force as well, including 8 superintendents, 3 inspectors, 2 sergeants and 42 serving constables. Talking to a few people in the town today, Ebeneza is still as respected in the town as he was back in 1862, when he was a serving police officer here. I've had a great time walking around Halesworth, and to the lovely people I've spoken to as well today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you all. But this is where I end this video. Thank you so much for watching, and look forward to seeing you on my next adventure.